What is the Civil War?
What caused the Civil War?
What happens in the Civil War?
Let's
Let's
talk
talk
about
about
it.
it. The Civil War is one of the most pivotal events in American history, yet it was a devastating conflict fought from 1861 to 1865 between the northern states, known as the Union, and the southern states, known as the Confederacy. The Civil War all arose from the issues of slavery, states' rights, and the balance of power between the federal government and the individual states. Now let us dive deeper into the Civil War by first talking about what caused it, starting with the Wilmot Proviso.
Wilmot Proviso. The Wilmot Proviso was a proposal in 1846 by David Wilmot that tried to stop slavery in any new territory gained from Mexico during the Mexican-American War. It is a big issue because it did not get passed. All it did was spark heated debates about slavery's expansion in the United States, which divided and intensified political tensions between the North and South. In American politics, it changed as the Democratic Party was fractured and some Northern Democrats created the Free Soil Party. Additionally, Southern Democrats were more determined to protect slavery, leading to big sectional conflicts. The Wilmot Proviso later influenced many other events, such as Compromise of 1850. However, the slavery conflict that it created divided the nation, foreshadowing the Civil War.
The Compromise of 1850. A stalemate over problems including states' rights, slavery, and economic disparities had been established in 1860 between the United States' northern and southern regions. Tensions increased when Abraham Lincoln was elected because he opposed the spread of slavery into new areas. States in the South perceived northern dominance as a danger and felt more and more isolated. The South saw Lincoln's election as an existential danger to their way of life. Therefore, efforts to reach a compromise were unsuccessful. This finally resulted in the Civil War in 1861 and the secession of southern states, starting with South Carolina in December 1860. Therefore, the Compromise of 1850 was an unsuccessful attempt to resolve the intractable disagreements between the North and South. At the time of the Compromise of 1850, there was a clear division between northern and southern states regarding issues like slavery and the balance of power in Congress. However, many southern politicians believed that the Compromise of 1850 favored northern interests, while some northern politicians argued that it was necessary to preserve the Union despite moral objections to certain aspects of the compromise, such as the Fugitive Slave Act.
The Kansas-Nebraska Act. The Kansas-Nebraska Act was a bill by Stephen Douglas in 1854 meant to organize the territory of Nebraska. It needed to be organized because of the big issue of deciding whether these new areas would allow slavery or not. In addition, people needed a transcontinental railroad to go through Texas and Chicago, but that meant passing through territories where slavery was banned. This led this bill to repeal the Missouri Compromise of 1820 and to let the new territories of Kansas, Nebraska, Montana, and the Dakotas decided for themselves whether to allow slavery or not. As the bill passed, it steered a lot of conflict as people flooded and clashed in the territories to choose the slavery status of the state. Later on, as the conflict continued with the Kansas-Nebraska Act, it started to fuel the Civil War.
The Pottawatomie Massacre. In 1865, John Brown and his group retaliated against pro-slavery forces in Kansas after the attack on the town of Lawrence. This caused much revenge for John Brown, which led to Brown leading a massacre along Pottawatomie Creek, killing 5 pro-slavery men. This event escalated tensions, leading to a period of violent conflict called Bleeding Kansas. Despite attempts to distance Brown from the massacre, evidence suggests he was directly involved. The South thought the massacre was a barbaric act of terrorism, while the North's perspective on this massacre was the opposite, as most of them thought it was a heroic act fighting against slavery. With both sides engaging in brutal warfare out of vengeance, they had to wait until order was restored by the territorial governor. The violence continued, and it later created the Civil War.
The election of 1860. The election of 1860 is one important event that set up the Civil War. In the election of 1860, it was between John Bell, Abraham Lincoln, John C. Breckinridge, and Stephen A. Douglas. With this election, the Democratic Party split over slavery. The Northern Democrats believed in popular sovereignty, which states that new states can decide if they should include or exclude slavery, while the Southern Democrats endorsed a federal slave code. As a Republican, Abraham Lincoln won the election. His main issue was slavery, and he wanted to keep it untouched in territories. However, Southerners loved slavery since it was their economy. This election set up the Civil War, dividing the nations into two. Lincoln's win also led 11 Southern states to leave the Union, leading to Lincoln creating the Emancipation Proclamation.
As tensions grew over the issue of slavery, the Civil War started. The Civil War was one of the most significant but devastating wars in American history, as it held great significance for the ending of slavery. However, it cost a lot for the nation with all of its horrific deaths. Let us dive into it more by starting the Battle of the Bull Run.
The Battle of Bull Run. The Battle of Bull Run, fought on July 21st, 1861, near Manassas, Virginia, was the first major land battle of American Civil War. General Irvin McDowell led a Union army of experienced recruits against Confederate forces commanded by General G.T. Beauregard. McDowell's goal aimed to capture the vital railroad junction at the Manassas, but he was halted by the stream named Bull Run. Despite early Union success, Confederate reinforcements under General Joseph E. Johnston turned the tide, leading to a Union retreat. The Battle of Bull Run shocked the nation. The North overlooked this battle and thought it was going to be a quick battle, which led to a missed chance at winning the battle as they lacked effort coming into the battle. Their overlooked caused massive error, as they ended up losing and boosting Confederate hopes. Nevertheless, the Battle of Bull Run was important in the Civil War.
Battle of Shiloh. The Battle of Shiloh, also known as the Battle of Pittsburgh Landing, took place on April 6 through 7, 1862, near Pittsburgh Landing, Tennessee. It was a significant engagement in the Civil War. Union forces led by General Ulysses S. Grant were surprised by Confederate troops under General Albert Sidney Johnston's command. Despite initial Confederate success, the Union rallied and reinforcements arrived, leading to heavy casualties on both sides. Ultimately, the Union forces repelled the Confederate advance, and the battle ended with the Confederates retreating. The Confederates could have won the significant battle if they had thought of a second plan, just in case the Union called for reinforcements. which they did. However, they did not think of this, which is unwise, as that is a reasonable first choice to make. In addition, they could have had a chance to plan out and attack them sooner to make it more unexpected and to have more preparation. The Confederates overlooked this chance and made a complete error by retreating. Nevertheless, the battle marked a turning point in the war's Western theater and set the stage for Union control of key strategic areas like Corinth and eventually Vicksburg.
The Emancipation Proclamation. Lincoln's victory in the election of 1860 led to 11 Southern states ceding from the Union to protect their rights to keep slaves. This led to Lincoln calling for the ceded states to return to the Union, or they would need to declare the states free. When no states returned, he issued a document on January 1st, 1863 called the Emancipation Proclamation. The Emancipation Proclamation stated that all slaves in the ceded and rebellious states were considered to be free. In addition, to change the nature of war, it made it more than just preserving the Union. The proclamation gave African Americans career opportunities such as joining Union armies and the Navy during the Civil War. However, it did not just help slaves and African Americans, it also fueled the Civil War, creating two sides: the Union, which is the North, and the Confederacy, which is the 11 ceded Southern states, also known as the South. Which the Emancipation Proclamation did not immediately end slavery, it was just a step forward, freeing enslaved people.
The First Conscription Act. During the Civil War, the Union and the Confederacy struggled to recruit enough soldiers for their armies. In response, the Union passed the Conscription Act of 1863, which mandated registration for military service for men aged 20 to 45. Service could be avoided by paying a fee or finding a substitute. They thought it was a great chance to develop and grow their army to become a top-tier and strong army for the Civil War. However, this was all overturned as they overlooked the nation's reaction, including the poor. This act led to disruption, particularly in working-class areas like New York City, where riots broke out due to perceived unfairness and injustice for the lower class and the poor. Lower-class citizens cannot afford the avoidance of registration. Similar reactions occurred with the Confederacy in the South, with both sections of the nation experiencing this disorder. They realized it was an error that was created. Despite these laws, both sides primarily rely on volunteers to fill their army and military.
The Battle of Chancellorsville. The Battle of Chancellorsville took place in April 1863, when Union General Hooker crossed the Rappahannock River to attack General Lee's Confederate forces. General Lee was smart about his defense, as he split his army and surprised the Union in 3 places, nearly defeating them. Even with heavy losses, such as Confederate General Jackson being mortally wounded. The battle ended in a Confederate victory due to Lee's tactics and Hooker's lack of courage. This battle was an issue as it gave hope to the Confederates. Giving hope to the Confederacy and boosting their morale is bad for the nation as it leans towards more harsh slavery economy. If General Hooker had only prepared his attack with his army, thoroughly planned out his attack, and had more confidence going into the attack, the Union could have won and had a better advantage in the Civil War. However, with this battle, Lee's intelligent tactics and army men moved on and headed to the Battle of Gettysburg.
Vicksburg Campaign. Vicksburg, Mississippi held great strategic importance in the Civil War as it controlled the Mississippi River, a vital trade route. From President Lincoln's perspective, he thought that capturing Vicksburg was crucial for Union victory. With all these points, in 1863, General Grant led a campaign for the Union Army to seize the city. The plan for this campaign was to split the South in two, which would disrupt Confederate supply lines and help the Union capture the Mississippi River. The Vicksburg campaign lasted over a year and involved numerous battles, such as the Battle of Champion Hill and maneuvers in the western theater of the war. Grant's forces faced stiff resistance and endured heavy casualties. On July 4, 1863, Confederate General Pemberton surrendered. They were granted Union control of Vicksburg and the Mississippi River. The Confederacy, also known as the South, knew this loss would affect them badly, since Vicksburg was equally important to them as it controlled their communication and supply routes. However, the Union, also known as the North, knew their victory was a turning point in the war, as it split the Confederacy in half, cut off their vital supply, and granted them an important trade route.
The Gettysburg Campaign. The Gettysburg Campaign was a significant turning point, marked by General Robert E. Lee's decision to invade the North. As Union General Joseph Hooker abandoned plans to attack Richmond, Pennsylvania, he decided to pursue Lee's army. However, Hooker resigned, which led to General George Meade taking command. The Battle of Gettysburg began on July 1, 1863, with a clash between Union and Confederate troops. Meade's forces held strong defensive positions and ultimately emerged victorious. Yet, they failed to pursue Lee's retreating army. The aftermath of the battle raised many points of view. In the South, their perspective of the campaign mainly revolves around the Confederate bravery and resilience, but is seen as a lost opportunity for victory due to strategic missteps. While in the North, their perspective of the Gettysburg campaign represented a crucial triumph for the Union, boosting Northern morale as they defeated the Confederacy.
As the Civil War ended, it turned out that the Union won. They defeated the Confederates, which led to their protection of slavery vanishing and slaves starting to be freed. However, with the nation's division, Lincoln and the government asked to reunite it. Let us dive deeper by starting with Abraham Lincoln issuing the Proclamation of Amnesty.
Abraham Lincoln issued the Proclamation of Amnesty and Reconstruction. As the Civil War ended, it divided up the nation, killing many Americans, which displaced the population, distorted the economy, and had other bad effects. With all these negative effects, it called for reunification, which caused President Abraham Lincoln to issue the Proclamation of Amnesty and Reconstruction on December 8, 1863, outlining his plan for reunifying the United States after the Civil War. The proclamation offered many pardons and property restorations to most Confederates, outlined conditions for forming new state governments, and encouraged plans for dealing with formerly enslaved people. While some Republicans criticized the plan for being too merciful, Lincoln's leadership and prestige helped collect acceptance. After Lincoln's assassination on April 14, 1865, disagreements over Reconstruction policies intensified between the new president, Andrew Johnson, and Congress. However, without Lincoln's aid and leadership to reconstruct and reunite the nation, the United States would not be where it is today.
The 13th Amendment is approved by Congress. The 13th Amendment was important after the Civil War. It meant that slavery was officially over in the United States. This changed a lot of things. First, it gave freedom to enslaved people. Before, they were treated like property, but now they would live their lives the way they wanted to. It also started a period called Reconstruction.
This is when the country tried to fix the South and made sure that freed black people could be a part of society, but it wasn't easy. There were still many problems, like racism and not enough rights for black people. The amendment also made laws to protect free black people, but even these laws, things weren't fair. Black people still faced a lot of discrimination and didn't have the same opportunity as white people. One big mistake people made back then was interpreting and thinking that ending slavery would just make things equal. But that wasn't true. It took many more years and a lot of fighting for civil war to make things more fair to everyone. Looking back now, we can see that while the 13th Amendment was important, it was just the beginning. It showed that change was possible, but also slow. Showed that we needed to do a lot more to make sure everyone had the same right and opportunity.
Former slaves are promised 40 acres and mule. Special Field Order No. 15, issued by General William T. Sherman in January of 1865, allocated in the southern states for free African American families. The order promised each family up to 40 acres of tillable land and the use of mules, aiming to address economic disparities stemming from slavery and empower African American communities with land ownership and agriculture opportunities. This promise was crucial as it symbolized a tangible step towards economic independence and self-sufficiency for formerly enslaved individuals. It represented an effort to transition from exploitative system of slavery to one where freed people could build their lives and livelihood. Special Field Order No. 15 is documented historical order issued by General Sherman and can be verified through archival records. There were varying opinions at the time regarding the fairness and feasibility of land redistribution to freed slaves. Some saw it as a necessary measure for racial equality, and economic empowerment, while others proposed it due to economic concerns or racial biases. In a sense, Special Field Order No. 15 and the promise of 40 acres and mules were pivotal in shaping discussions around post-slavery economic reforms and racial equality. They highlight the diverse viewpoints and debates that characterize the Reconstruction period in American history. And that'll be all.
Gettysburg Address. The Gettysburg Address is one of the most famous speeches in American history, delivered by President Abraham Lincoln during the Civil War. Lincoln gave this address on November 19th, 1863, at the dedication of the Soldiers' National Cemetery in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, where a pivotal battle had taken place a few months earlier. The impact of the Gettysburg Address on the Civil War and American history is profound for several reasons. Lincoln's speech emphasized the importance of national unity and the preservation of the Union. He highlighted the sacrifices made by soldiers in defending democracy and freedom, calling on the nation to ensure that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. The address reiterated the core values of liberty, equality, and democracy, which were central to the Union's cause in the Civil War. It served as a reminder of the ideals for which the war was fought and the principles upon which the nation was founded. The Gettysburg Address inspired both Union soldiers and civilians, reinforcing their commitment to the war effort and providing a sense of purpose and moral clarity during a tumultuous time. Over time, the Gettysburg Address has become a symbol of American resilience, unity, and the ongoing struggle for freedom and equality. It is studied and celebrated as a masterpiece of oratory and a foundational document in American political and moral discourse. In summary, the Gettysburg Address impacted the Civil War by rallying support for the Union cause, reinforcing national values, and leaving a lasting legacy as a testament to the enduring principles of democracy and liberty. The Civil War was a turning point in American history, bringing an end to slavery and reshaping the nation. Despite the devastation it caused, it ultimately paved the way for progress and unity. The war taught important lessons about the value of equality and justice for all citizens. Its legacy continues to influence American society today, reminding us of the ongoing struggle for freedom and civil rights. Overall, the Civil War remains a defining chapter in the nation's journey toward a more perfect union.